So welcome back to Brolosophy. I'm sitting here with the great Ben Angliss. So I'll introduce Ben from my end. So Ben, I was actually thinking of how to introduce you. I was like, and I started thinking about, what I do to introduce you. I thought, far out, Ben's actually a bit of a multifaceted bloke. I never thought I'd say that about him. But so Ben, for any listeners, Ben is he used to be my employer. Used to be my coach, firstly, at a CrossFit gym, CrossFit MP first, CrossFit MP, CrossFit Mornington Peninsula, which became CrossFit Rosebud. I ended up coaching under Ben when I entered the fitness industry. And to be fair, I probably attribute, that probably was one of the bigger changes in my life, fitness industry into Adventure Fit, which led me here. So, if you unravel it all, it's pretty cool. But Ben, I've got a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about, but tell me a little bit about yourself. What would you say you are? Like, what are you into? Introduce yourself to the crew.
Okay, yep. So multifaceted, is that what it was? That's interesting. I haven't had that description before, but currently I'm a firefighter. I'm still in the fitness industry. It's something that I'm still passionate about. So I work at a mate of mine's gym in Mornington at the Renovator on my days off, but I also have just started an online training platform so that I can reach more people, essentially. It's been a bit of an experience. There's so much online stuff. I know you're a bit more tech savvy than me with that, but
you do it so well.
There's a lot more to the click funnels and the landing pages and all of that stuff. But it's been a pretty good experience over the last few months. You reached out when I started putting out some videos. It's definitely got me out of my comfort zone. So I've always been comfortable to talk in front of groups. I've loved coaching. I love teaching. I love seeing development in people. But then getting on a social media platform was a step for me that definitely made me anxious.
Yeah.
But I actually really enjoy it now. So it's something that I'm passionate about. And moving forward, I really want to use that platform, whichever social media line it is, to reach more people as far as health and fitness, but like we mentioned earlier as well, even men's mental health and things like that. So yeah,
you're doing a great job, mate. I remember when I saw you on the on Facebook doing the front-facing camera stuff, doing the monologue down the. I thought, wow, like you're really good at it. Because most of that stuff, if it's a fitness coach or a business coach or whatever it is, someone trying to say something, most of the time I look down this bloke's looking down the camera to me and I'm like, oh, this is really cringeworthy. I really don't like it. But your stuff's so valuable. It's really, really good. So I'm not surprised that you're off to a good start there. So what made you want to start well, actually, let's take it back. Let's not skip ahead. So where did the whole fitness industry thing come from for you? Where did it start?
Look, similar to you, I grew up playing pretty much all sports. Loved them. Obviously had a couple of sports that you chose to continue to put more time into as I got older. And then through wanting to be better for those led me to training, so just starting to some sort of fitness. If I was to look back at it, it's quite amusing to what I would have been doing, I'm sure.
I remember you threw a barbell into your face one day. I remember that.
That's when I was meant to have known what I was doing. But well earlier than that, I used to move a barbell around a little bit, but then just through my natural interest for knowledge, made me read a little bit more. And then through training for the sports, got me to a point. Then I chose to join the Air Force, which was to follow in my grandfather's footsteps. And then to train for that just made me sort of read a little bit more. So, I mean, it's a really soft introduction to the fitness industry, but I thought, this is what I need to do. And I wanted to know what I had to do to make sure that I'd perform well. Then going through the first couple of years of the Air Force, it's a physical or PT in defence is huge, and they had physical training instructors, and they used to take us for PT. There were some brutal sessions, but I loved it, and I thought. But even these guys taking us, I thought, that'd be awesome. Like that'd be so much fun. And then from there, it was just within a year after that, I had to finish my trade training in the Air Force. But once I'd done that, I started doing my Cert 3 and 4 online, and then decided that it's what I want to do in the Air Force. So that was how I got into the fitness industry, and then the expansion from there was, there's a few avenues that I've been down.
Yeah, you've done everything. So, you've done everything for sure. Yeah. So when you're a PT, it's PTI?
Yeah, physical training instructor.
Physical training instructor. Yeah. When you're a PTI in the Air Force, what does the day-to-day look like? Like how often are you training the guys? What does a session look like? Tell us about the workings of it, I guess?
Well, it really depends where you're posted. So it depends on your unit and how many people you've got. But day-to-day at a training establishment, for example, in Wagga, where we've got most of our trainees, we will have 3 back-to-back classes of PT usually to start the day. Then we'll have a lunchtime circuit, and then you'll have PT at the end of the day. So you've got any given day 5 PT classes to run. Then outside of that time, we did get time to train ourselves, which was great. But then we also run, part of our job was adventure training. So we would run high ropes courses, abseiling off. We had a water tower, which was 50 metres. So for promotional courses.
Sounds like an adventure fit trip.
Yeah, that's it. So so we'd also have those things to run outside of the classes. But because there's a few staff, you weren't going to get put on everything all in one hit. But the day-to-day was definitely PT for the first 3 hours of the morning. Then, between the couple of hours between lunch, then, it was either adventure training or we'd have a little bit of time to train. And then you've obviously just got your normal admin stuff as well. But it was pretty fun.
Yeah,
it was good.
Sounds like it would have been unbelievable fun. But so what's it look like for an actual cadet or whatever you would call it in the Air Force? Like, what does their training look like? So they're doing one of these sessions? They're doing double days? They're doing
one, so they'll get 3 sessions a week.
Oh,
so
right.
it's not as hectic
like
as the
SEAL
movies.
training.
Or SEAL training. So
I
even remember getting ready for recruit training thinking, we're going to go there and get smashed.
Yeah,
I'm watching
running through barbed wire fences. Electrocuted.
Watching these movies thinking, oh no. It wasn't quite as full on as that. Their days are fairly active anyway for a recruit because they're up and about early. They're marching around anyway. And a lot of it now has gone to injury prevention. So the older style of training is definitely effective. We have to come in line with society, and as a community and societies is not as active as it used to be, so we can't get away with as much training without causing more injuries. So
would it just be smarter as well to because like getting someone to the fittest they've ever been and then having them break is obviously not what you want, is it? Do you think that's in line with professional sport as well? Like, because I think some of the practices you would hear about in AFL 30 years ago are quite different to the way that they'd be applied now. Do you reckon that's similar as well?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. There's certain things that's where, when you look at something like an elite sport with the AFL, there's no doubt. I mean, everyone used to hear the 100 hundreds that they'd run or whatever, like that's just never happening these days. They're not even allowed to do goal practice after training, so they don't load their hamstrings too much now.
Get your mates in a circle and the bloke that didn't get the most possessions on the ground gets beat up by all your mates.
But the military, and particularly through, definitely some of the jobs in the army, they have to still train in that realm where there's a chance of injury because you need to train ready for what you're going to encounter, which you don't know exactly what that's going to be. Yeah. But if you're only training safely all the time and then you go put in this high stress situation, then there's a fair chance you're going to break down.
You can't train sub-maximum all the time and then go to a war zone.
That's it, yeah. So you're definitely not trying to break them, but there's definitely some areas where PT steps up and there's a chance.
And so in the Air Force, with the physical side of it coming into the Air Force, is there tests do you have to go through like a certain scenario of what do you have to get through and be competent at to actually make it into the Air Force?
It's very low standard now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very low now. Yep. So it's dropped a fair bit. So to give you this, it's nearly embarrassing saying this now. For the normal trade, it will be 6.5 on the beep test.
6.5?
Yep, 6.5. So
I can hop 6.5.
Yeah, that's right. You can run it backwards, which we have done before. But
that's right.
Yeah. So 6.5 on the beep test. What is it then? 30-second flexed arm hang. So basically hold yourself above a bar like
that's
this
actually
for 30 seconds.
Probably harder than the beep test. That's not...
Yeah,
not easy.
In theory it should be.
Yeah.
But some people turn up that obviously have never run at all.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I think it's 30 sit-ups to a 3-second cadence. Very low level. Depending on what trade you're going into, so to be a physical training instructor, the standards are totally different. To apply, that's a week-long testing to get selected for that. If you're going into the army, it's only slightly high though, 7.5 on the beep test.
Really?
So it's quite low. The standards, because, like I mentioned earlier, they are after a job specific or a trade that they want you to be able to complete rather than being a soldier first.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
training for your brain rather than for your body.
Yeah, which is...
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense
and from a financial perspective, it works better for the government as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because 6.5 on the beep test in any sort of high-performing sport, you'd be just laughed out the door.
Absolutely, yeah.
I got 14 something one time.
Yeah.
Like that's a decent beep test is 11 or 12 for sure, 13 I reckon.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
For sure. Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, even the fireys, to get in the fireys is 9.6.
Oh,
so
really?
At least that's, that's at the standard.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So how long were you in the Air Force for all up?
14 years.
14 years?
Yep.
So, but you were still halfway in real life and halfway in the Air Force, right? So you still lived a relatively normal life.
Yeah, so, yep, I mean, you've obviously got to move around on postings, but you don't live on base.
Yeah.
The defence really has changed over the last sort of 40, 50 years, where everyone used to live on base, but now no one really does.
Gotcha.
Some single people might in the blocks, but the housing's all gone. Mm-hmm. So you live just out in the community like normal. Like you saw, I was still in the Air Force when I had the gym. Yeah. So you work Monday to Friday most of the time. So you do really have that sort of normal life. It's the people that get deployed, obviously, that get taken away for an extended period of time where it changes a little bit. So
for sure. And do you miss do you miss your time in the Air Force?
Aspects of it. I definitely miss the camaraderie with being a physical training instructor. Very small sections, so you never work with more than sort of 8 people. So you're pretty tight knit.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, you're dealing with a lot of people, but you've got that, and it was always good fun. And we did have time to go out and play games and sport and have competitions, and it was always a fun environment where we're all active and we'd all have some funny stuff to do. Where it might be trying to hop the beep test or just things like that. Like it might be as silly as that. We go out and go, all right, let's go out to the pool and there's hold a weight and so you can run the furthest, and then you turn it into a contest where it's like, oh, you made the 50 metres underwater, so now you got to see how far we can go back. It was just cool stuff. It was just fun
for sure.
But then then I still speak to some of the boys and they're still whinging about the exact same thing that I used to whinge about when I was in there. So I think
the one-legged beep test.
I don't. So I don't miss that. So it was a good time. It's definitely set me up for lots of other things that I've done. It's given me a good grounding, a good platform for skills that I've taken on further. But it was a good time. I don't think it's something that I'd want to go back to though.
Yeah. I think of it as a footy club kind of, because I look back at my time playing footy, and I think you just had that instant camaraderie every day. Or for us, it'd be 3 days a week, 3 or 4 days a week. You'd be Tuesday Arvo, Thursday Arvo night, Saturday in the day, and then maybe Sunday recovery. You'd be with 30 or 40 lads. Yeah. And there's no end to laughter and banter and, funny stories and, from everybody's life and so forth. And that's pretty, I feel like, obviously before we started recording, we were talking about something similar about, community stuff and what have you. And I feel like that's pretty important stuff, and stuff that I particularly look back really fondly on. I was the same with school. I absolutely loved my time at school. So many people, I've heard people finish school and they're like, oh, Jesus, thank God that's over. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Hanging out with your mates for, 8 hours a day, just taking the piss out of teachers and stealing people's lunches. That was a great time, So I feel like it'd be a little bittersweet getting out of the military or any sort of
it is, but
like
it's interesting to talk about that. But the bond you get with a lot of the people in defence, because you are like-minded people. That's how you've ended up there. Then all of a sudden you whether it's from defence basketball tournaments or whatever, and then you end up being mates with them. And the mates that I've got from defence are the closest mates that I've got. Yeah. So outside of school and anything like that, they're spoke about going away next year on a boys trip. That's with all boys from defence still, So you sort of miss having that direct connection with that day-to-day chat on the email or whatever it might be. But, those connections and bonds that you get are just, they're lifelong.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. And I think, so you were never really in any posted scenario where there was, lives on the line and so forth.
No, I actually didn't get deployed. I was at a training establishment when I could have gone and they wouldn't let me go. But
gotcha.
Even as a PTI, you on deployment, they're still in a relatively safe area.
Yeah,
it's not so much like the
you're just doing push-ups out of the back of the shed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
yeah.
So I've definitely had a lot of friends that have though, and been in some pretty hairy situations, and and that's. I suppose it's a lot of them when, I know we might talk about a bit about men's mental health later, but it's a lot of those guys that are that make me want to raise this awareness as well.
Yeah. I think the reason I asked that is because because I was pretty certain, knowing your background and being mates with you for a long time, that you weren't actually deployed, but I just wanted to clear it up. But even the fact that you weren't deployed, like even what you're training for and what you're preparing yourself for, and the investment that you're putting into your time in the military and the Air Force, that's pretty heavy duty stuff. It's not really mucking around. So I feel like the bonds would be strong there, because you're like, we're out here to do something, and if push comes to shove, we're the defense of the nation. It's not fucking around. Yep. So I could see that those bonds would be, pretty strong stuff.
Yeah, it is good. Because like you say, if required, you are relying on each other in a life or death situation. So, it can be, yeah.
So, because I've heard, we've all seen, all different military movies, and American Sniper is obviously, it's a horrific story of, the true story of what happened and so forth. And we've all read books and listened to podcasts. So, you knowing people quite well and people that are close to you coming back from situations like that, why is it so difficult with PTSD and,
You look, obviously the exposure that some of those people in the military on deployment get to situations are things that we would only see in a movie, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then we can easily, we know we can just sit there and go, it's not real to us because it's on a movie, and we're so desensitized now to violence on movies anyway. So it's not so much of a real thing. But these guys have seen things that you probably wouldn't even put into a movie. They've lost mates. Then they come back over here. They can't talk about those exact situations purely because of secrecy stuff as well. So it's hard for them to vent, but they also come in a very male-dominated environment. So not talking about, there's definitely females in defence, but in those combat roles, there isn't.
Yeah.
So you're even more in that, it's like a footy club, I suppose, even more in that male-dominant environment. So for them to show weakness or talk about it makes it even harder again.
Yeah.
So I think
Plus, no one can relate on the outside world.
Nah, that's right.
I would imagine if one of my mates was telling me about a terrible war zone and actually what happened in there, it'd fuck me up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to really talk about it with people, with
that's it.
Civilians, I guess.
There's things that go on that you wouldn't want civilians to even know because of the judgment as well that those guys have got. Because unfortunately in war, things happen.
There's two sides.
That's exactly right. And so it's a tough place for them to be. For one, seeing it, they're just young blokes.
Yeah.
You can go all the way back to the World Wars where they were literally 15 and 16-year-old boys lying about their age to go away, and being exposed to this sort of stuff. It's heavy. It's heavy stuff. And and then like I said, being in that male dominant environment, it just makes it even harder again. So I've had since doing a little bit of this FaceTime on social media, and then talking a little bit more about men's mental health. I've had 3 military guys. One's about to be medically discharged because of issues to do with it. That have reached out to me that I know, not close mates, but we're definitely acquaintances.
Yep.
That have basically just opened up on messages where I'm like, wow, okay, and then I feel like, am I qualified to do this? Or, what? Because it makes me feel like, okay, I don't have an answer for this, but I know I don't need an answer. Yeah. It's an outlet for them.
You're qualified to hear someone else.
And I've just tried to guide them in that into the direction so they can go and get a little bit more help, because, I feel it's humbling for them to contact me when they've not spoken to anyone else about it, and then for me to be able to have that input, because I know how hard it is for them to come out and open up about it. So,
no, that's great that you're doing that. We've had similar things in the past with the podcast, and I had a guy in New Zealand tell me about the fact that his wife had left him and he hadn't told anyone, and they were separated in their own house, and the kids didn't know, and none of his family friends. And I had this long, back and forth with this dude, because I think people just need someone to talk to, and I think that's why, again, we talked before the show, a third party can often be the best place to start, because they're not going to give you any judgment if they do. Like, you don't know them anyway. You hardly know. They're not your friends
that's
and family,
right.
the closest people that you probably care about what they think. That's great. I think I remember hearing with on different podcasts and bits and pieces, people coming back from military situations, and I could totally see how this would play out. Like, I think being in a scenario like that, everything's so, you have to be in the present.
Yep.
There's no time to fuck around and worry about where your bills are getting paid from the next month, and that girl that you dated on the weekend, whether she likes you or not. Like, it's like, because that's what we thrive for. That's what they talk about as the flow state or whatever. Whether it's, I think I went for a surf last Sunday with a buddy of mine, and first surf I've had in like 5 years. I bought a new board and so forth like a couple of months ago. I want to get back into it.
Yep.
And I fucking sucked. I looked like a total
I was just going to ask
yeah. My mate's only been surfing like 3 years. He's got this big dopey, mini mal or whatever, and he was getting wave after wave after wave. And I've got this little short board, thinking I'm, didn't work out that way. But I actually think about flow state. Two of the things I think are the best for flow state that I can think of is like surfing. Because I was talking to Tim, my mate, about it. He's like, man, because he does high stress currency trading on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
And he said, man, when I'm sitting out here talking, I'm thinking about currency. We're chatting and I'm interacting with people. I'm thinking about fucking currency. He goes, but when the wave comes and my eyes hit the peak, currency's out of the window. And I'm on. It's the only time I'm actually on, and I'm living in the present, really. And I feel like surfing, sex, and sport, they're three things that, like, you can't be having sex and be thinking about paying your bills, and if you are, you shit at sex. But being in a war zone is the absolute epitome of that. Like, you're so laser focused on the present, which in this day and age, with all we have going on, there's not enough people that are focused on what's going on right now. That's when you're in your happiest place. And I feel like coming back, that'd be another thing that, being so hyper-focused on the present and being in that flow state is like addictive.
Yeah.
So I'd assume
well, it is. I mean, you think that it's nearly a constant stream of adrenaline that they would have in certain situations, that last for, you don't even know what period of time. And that's it. And you get that on the daily, and then you come back to normal life where it's quiet. There's nothing happening. Yeah, it's definitely hard to integrate back into, I suppose. But speaking of that, it's interesting you brought it up because I know on your podcast, on the Adventure Fit podcast, you spoke a lot about yep, that was good. Can't think of it now. What do you call it? With your breathing,
we'll just cut all this bit out.
Meditation. So, are you still doing that regularly in the morning?
Oh, I didn't actually meditate for about 5 months throughout this year.
Okay.
And I just started dabbling back in, but I went probably 3 years where nearly every morning I would meditate.
Yep.
But what I actually did was I had a bit of a rough period over the last, just probably the last 3 months. I wasn't really where I wanted to be. So I actually started meditating when I started a wellness routine again.
Yep.
So I've got this big board at my house. It's a big bit of ply, and I've like painted it black with little squares. Well, I made it look pretty, and it's effectively, it says, it was a calendar, and I turned it into a wellness board. So it's my wellness routine, and I have on the left, across the top, I have days of the week. On the left, I have things I want to do in the day, and it's like 8 hours sleep, make my bed, cold shower, meditate, journal, train, exercise, see my mates, switch off my phone. I think that's it. And I actually, to get back into a routine, because I've done it twice in the past where I've gamified my routine.
Yep.
So I try and score myself and better myself and so on and so forth.
Yep.
It's pretty sweet. So I've done it for 8 weeks now, and I'm giving myself this week off. And I'll only do it I might not pick it back up, or I'll do it for maybe another month, and then I'll probably scrap it for another couple of years. But just to reintegrate that routine back into my life. And I noticed, I was like, fuck, I haven't meditated for 3 or 4 months. And I've started meditating a little bit again, but I have so many bits and pieces that I throw into my days that prepare me to, be the best version of myself. Meditation is one of them. And I used to think it was, a huge driver and the be all and end all. But now I think it's a nice to have. And I actually think there's a couple of other more significant bits and pieces that I need to do. This is just me. Everyone's different. And that's around getting sleep and seeing my mates, really.
Yeah.
Seeing people, being around people.
Yep.
And particularly my mates, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because you talk about being in the now, and I think anyone that hasn't meditated at all probably doesn't fully understand it because it wasn't until I haven't done a whole lot of it. It's just we've done some drills. I did my mental health first aid. We did some breathing.
Mental health first aid?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Mental health first aid is a course that
this is in the Fireys, right?
Yeah, but it's still a nationally recognised course.
Yeah, right.
It's essentially to educate you on how to better assist people and look for the signs. So I did suicide prevention, a suicide awareness and prevention course, which was a course we had to do as a senior NCO in the Air Force, which again is to look for signs or whatever. But the mental health first aid, it was a great couple of days. It was really interesting. It's a relatively new course, and the Fire Brigade is super proactive with being on top of this because it is such an issue in the emergency services. And over that course, so they talk about looking out for these signs, helping someone. This is how you can do it. This is where you can lead them. This is what you can do. But at the end of the day, you still need to go and look after yourself because if I listen to all your problems right now and I provide that space for you, that's great. It's not saying I'm going to walk out the door and have an issue, but I still have taken on that burden anyway. So I need to go out and make sure that I can then make sure that I'm looking after myself. So they were even talking about from there to do even a minute of meditation or breathing. And I found that's when I started it. And I sat there, and my mind. They said your mind's going to race. Come back and try and think of this. Your mind's going to race. In 60 seconds, my mind was in 75 places. I don't know how that was possible. Yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, come back to it. And I'm like, I've got this now. And come back to it. And it blew me away of how much I would struggle to be in that moment at that time to concentrate on one thing. Yeah. So it's something that I try and incorporate when I feel like it. It's not a daily routine. I don't have it locked in, but it's when I just feel like I'm just going to sit and just get my shit together, basically.
It definitely does work. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've used it always as for me, meditation, because people used to talk to me all the time. They still do a bit about meditation because I would talk about it on the podcast and, whatever. And I would always say to them, like, look, they go, do you think you're better off that you meditate? And I'm like, you know what? I think I am, but I don't really know. Because I just think that if I'm meditating, I'm probably going to be a slightly better version of myself, slightly more grounded, slightly more, level-headed and whatever. But I don't really know because I'm not taking data on myself every day. And I'm not before meditation, after, during, whatever. So, but I do have one example, and it was when I was a non-believer. So I had the Headspace app, and it's 10 free meditations. And this was like 5 years ago when I started. It was still the same thing. It was still 10 onboarding free meditations from Headspace. Yep. And so I was going through a bit of that social anxiety stuff and whatever, and just not doing super well, not doing super bad either. And I reckon I did the first one, and then I was like, that was fucked. I hated that. Because you think you're doing it poorly. You think you suck at it, Yep. And then I probably did the next one 2 weeks later, and then I did the next one a week later, and then I was just like, I'm no good at this. This sucks, and I hate every second of it. And I didn't do it for another month. Then it was like 2 months. I reckon I got to about less than 7 of this 10-step guided meditation app, and it took me about 18 months. And then one day, because Adventure Fit was so stressful, and I remember having my laptop open, and I was sitting there, and I had all these fires to put out. And I'm talking like decent sized fires. Like, I was a nightmare of a scenario. Yep. And I was like, okay, cool. Where do I start? And I was trying to calm myself. Come on, you need to get to work. You need to just knock them off one at a time. And no matter what I did, all I could do was stare at the screen. And I never really had this before. So much stress where I couldn't actually type and start because I didn't know where to start. I was just so overwhelmed. Yep. And I thought to myself, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to have to fucking do something here. I'm going to try this fucking rubbish meditation shit again. So I go to my room and I put in the Headspace app, and I started breathing and whatever, and don't know whether it was talking about it in the guided nature of the guided meditation, but or whether I was just thinking about it. But let's say they were talking about it. They were like, okay, cool, you might have a lot of thoughts in your head. And I was like, yeah, I've got fucking 500,000 thoughts in my head right now. And then it's like a couple more breaths. It's like you should feel some thoughts go away and subside. I'm like, oh, yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I feel like I've got 200,000. And then 2 more. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I've got 500 things in my head. This seems to be working. 50 things, 10 things, 2 things, 1 thing, still. And I was like, what the fuck just happened? It was insane. It's given me kind of goosebumps to remember back to it, because I was like, I'd never had that before. And I finished. There was still like 5 minutes to go on the meditation.
Yep.
So I just concentrated on the breath, felt totally still. And I got up off the bed and I went like this. I went, stretched myself out. All right, let's fucking get to work. And I sat down and I just started knocking off, all the tasks and putting out all the fires. And that was the one day that definitely did sell me on meditation. And I've never really had as impactful of an instance as that. But that, for me, proved meditation's efficacy straight away.
Yep.
I was like, that's fucking insane. It's incredible. I'll tell you another thing which is quite funny. So the only other time I felt like that, where I felt fully cleared of thoughts, so completely, was I took 10 grams of mushrooms about 18 months ago.
Yep.
So a hero's dose of magic mushrooms, which is like next level, put you on fucking another planet, another universe, is 5 grams, and I had 9.5 grams, halfway accidentally, and halfway just being a fucking moron.
It's not like you.
But it's so funny. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I wouldn't recommend doing it. I did it by myself. It's the dumbest thing I've ever done, really. Like, it was fucking stupid. But anyway, I did it. But aside from all the other weird and wonderful and weird, wacky stuff that happened, I thought I died. I thought I was dead. And I was fucking crying my eyes out. 4 hours I thought I was dead. I was writing letters to my parents. And I thought I was because I was in my body. I could see where I was, but I thought that I was in the space between death and actual everything's gone, in that grace period, life flashing before your eyes, basically. That's where I thought I was. Yeah. And because I thought I had died, I was, at one point I walked out and looked up at the stars and I said to myself, well, that's fucking it, eh? But the funny thing was, for this whole 4 hour period, I was sad as fuck, because all I could think about was my brother and my mum, my dad a little bit, a couple of my mates, really my brother and my mum. And I felt my mum was going to be so upset. I'm going to miss my brother so much. But having said that, every other thing that I've ever stressed about in my life, every bit of anxiety, every bit of, stress, every bit of depressive moods, I had none of it. Like, for the 5 hours that I thought I was dead, 4 or 5 hours, I was the most at peace I've ever been.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Because I'd actually, in my own head, I'd come to the realization, nothing to stress about anymore.
Yeah.
What's the point of stressing, So, and I was recalling my life. And like I said, I was sad, but it was the most at peace I've ever been also.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's quite interesting, yeah. It's quite interesting. And I just think it's because you don't have that stuff to stress about. But it's funny you talk, something you mentioned earlier, you said, looking after yourself when you have people around you that aren't doing so well. I reckon in the last 3 months, I had that period where I was having a bit of a rough trot, and I've had people around me that have been suicidal, good friends of mine, and it fucking takes it out of you. It absolutely, I reckon it cooked me a bit, Yeah. It really cooked me.
So did you do anything to look after yourself at that point, or were you just pretty much just carrying it?
Probably didn't do anything for long enough. That's when I started the wellness thing again. I'm like, right, I got to fucking straighten myself out a little bit here. Started seeing my psychologist again. I've just seen him once, but I've booked in a few to keep up with him. A little bit. But when I talk about the wellness stuff, that's incorporating, getting 8 hours sleep every night, meditation. There's about 10 things in that wellness thing that started again. So, but it's a heavy burden to bear, other people's.
I think it's even the helplessness as well, because you don't have an answer. You can't change their mood. You can't. Or when I say mood, not necessarily that they're cranky or anything, but you can't change their mindset. It's a slow process, and if anything, we feel bad. We feel bad that we can't help, and I think it's just, and it is. We just take it on board, and you could see quite easily how you got into a rut as well yourself without looking after yourself. So, and that's where this mental health first aid is. It's definitely pitched at everybody, but it applied really well to the fire brigade, because we don't want a flow-on effect of somebody struggling, then you're trying to help them, then you get it, and then we have this domino effect, So, I think it was one of the better things. Oh, one of the better. There was lots of good things, but it was a really good thing to come out of the course. You know, talking about looking after yourself, and they make a big point of that. So
yeah, you can't help others if you can't help yourself.
Exactly.
It's like a relationship. You know, you can't, like my last relationship, the long-term-ish relationship where I was together for a year with Jill, and that was at my worst point mental health wise.
Yep.
And I really believe in the whole, you can't love someone else without loving yourself. And I'm not saying I had no self-love or whatever they say, but my life was just hectic, Yep. I couldn't keep my own head above water rather than be a good, boyfriend, partner to somebody else.
Yep.
It's super key. So why do fireys get mental health issues?
Again, exposure. So a lot of people don't know the fire brigade are first responders to code 0, so people unresponsive, not breathing.
Right.
So pretty much any dead person, and a lot of the time we're there first. So that includes suicides, drug overdoses, any of that stuff.
Oh, really?
Plus, you've also got exposure to obviously car accidents and things like that come out of that.
Cats in trees.
Yeah, cats in trees, yeah. That's all we do, mate. We just go and rescue cats from trees.
Probably not the right time for levity, but anyway.
So I mean, it's really just that exposure. And it just accumulates over time. There's, even a guy off my course, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that you've been a fiery for 30 years. He went out to a 7-year-old girl that he had to work on. She didn't make it. He's got a 7-year-old girl. He went home that night, and that just it destroyed him then and there. I mean, look, he spoke about it instantly. Everyone got around him. It was good, and we can talk it out. That's fine. But there's a lot of people that will be in situations and then just not speak about it again, and then it just accumulates. So, an interesting thing again, because I haven't been exposed to it, was there's some people in the fire brigade that all of a sudden go to one incident that you think is run of the mill. It's not even that much. It's not too much, but it triggers something, and they say that I'm remembering things from 20 years ago that I'd forgotten about.
Yeah.
So they're then reliving this, and then those issues come up. So, again, so like police, obviously paramedics, they see a whole world of things as well, and fire it's just constant exposure to that stuff. So,
yeah. I think it hits certain people different ways. As I think one of the things that fucks me over is I'm personality traits wise, I'm not a all round great at everything bloke, but I'm quite empathetic.
Yep.
And like and it to my detriment, I take other people's energies on. Like I see someone walk in the room and they're sad, I notice right away. I'm like, oh fuck, that dude's anxious.
Yeah.
I notice it right away. So because it was funny because I had a flyer of a day on just a great day. I just came home from what I'd maybe trained, just got good stuff done at work, interactions with any random person were just, happy and just like good banter and whatever. Just a good day. And then I came home and I remember in the space of 2 hours, my day unraveled. So I came home and I've got this guy staying with me on Airbnb for like a couple of weeks in this one room that we've got. And I asked him why he's an Indian guy, and I thought, because he has a strong, heavy accent, he's actually been over here for 10 years, but I said, Veranda, like, what are you up to? What are you doing in Melbourne? He's like, oh, no, I live here. I said, oh, right, yeah, sorry. I said, what are you doing staying at my joint? And he goes, oh, I'm going through a divorce with my wife. I was like, oh, fuck. No worries. Oh, sorry, man. Fucking hell. And then, but he started to open up about it. I'm like, okay, cool. That was actually earlier in the day, sorry. And then I came back later on that night, and he asked me if I'd have dinner with him. I'm like, oh, yeah, I was kind of busy because I was going to go watch Joker in the evening. And then he's like, oh, would you please? And I'm like, I could tell he was having a shit one and he wanted to spend a bit of time and just get some stuff off his chest. So I'm like, yeah, 100%. And he sat down, he just made some like cream cheese, bagel-y looking things with salmon, and it was shit. That was actually but so anyway, but he then tells me like, he's getting divorced with his wife, but he's got this beautiful daughter. I'm like, oh, fuck, man. And he's showing me photos of his daughter and telling me how bad it is that he can't see her on this. And then I was just real down for him. And then he said, he goes, oh, and I haven't told you also, I've got Parkinson's disease.
Oh,
and I was like, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, he's 44. He goes, they gave me 6 years of independence. No, they gave me 3 years of independence 6 years ago. He goes, I'm on bro time. And I was just like...
My God.
Oh. And then, fucking hell. So this bloke, he's going right, but he's like, his left leg doesn't really, when he walks, it's pretty much stiff. Yep. And then his left arm is like shakes dead. And I didn't notice any of this stuff, but then when he told me, it's blatantly obvious.
Yep.
You know, and he's gonna deteriorate like a hockey stick curve of like once it starts to really hit him, which it is, it's going to be really, really fucked. And it was so sad. So I went from that conversation with Verenda for about an hour, and he's actually a lovely guy. Like, I really got a lot of time for him. He's got a kind heart, and he's a nice guy to talk to, and he's, you know, he's just got everything going poorly for him. And then I went to watch The Joker. Have you seen The Joker?
No, I haven't seen it. Is it good?
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, right.
It's a masterpiece.
Oh, I'm keen.
It's really good. It's really good. But I reckon it's the saddest movie I've ever seen.
Oh, so you've just gone from that conversation to the saddest movie you've ever seen.
But it's not sad because it's like, you know, emotional, you know, rom-com or, you know, romantic drama or whatever. It's because this guy, the Joker, whatever his name is, he's got a name in the movie. Arthur, not Dent. That's the fucking Two-Face. Arthur, whatever his name is. So he's just a bloke who, he's a, you know, American guy. He's a loser from what everyone, you know, society would call him. Lives with his mum. Shit at everything he's tried to do. Like, thought he was going to be a stand-up comedian and it just failed. And it's really just a dark portrayal of a really unhappy man. And I thought about it. I don't know what made me think about this. I was like, that movie should have been called Diary of an American Terrorist. You know?
Yeah, right.
Because that's what it is, really. He was like, and that's what's going on in America right now.
Yeah.
Terrorism, white terrorism. You know, we talk about, you know, Donald Trump talks about not letting, you know,
Mexicans in.
Yeah, and it's like, hang on a sec, mate. You have, you know, every second day there's a mass shooting, and they're all white blokes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
They're all just sad white blokes. And so the movie's actually, I reckon it's a masterpiece, but I don't know if I'll ever watch it again. It's like, it's so raw and hard hitting. For someone who's empathetic, and from this conversation I just had with Renda, I literally started the day, got to about 6 p.m. I'm like, I've had a fucking great day today. You know? Then I have this conversation and watch The Joker. I went to bed. I'm like,
bottom.
I'm like, there is so much suffering in the world. It was like, it fucking killed me.
Yeah, but, I suppose all you can do then is just, you've just got to get back on track and look after yourself then, don't you?
Yeah, and I'm
that next day. But
yeah, that's right. But
how's he going now?
Verenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's not going great. This was only, you know, this conversation was only a week ago. So
that was only a week, yeah.
Yeah, okay. But no, he's not doing great. But he understands the situation. You know, everybody's been, you know, partly through it. I got a mate who's just about to have. We were in here last night actually, and then we went rock climbing. He's just about to have his second kid with the girl of his dreams, and they were fucking great together. And you know, his mum went through terminal cancer for years and years and years, and when she actually passed away, it hit him really hard, and he went to shit, and then their relationship went to shit, and they're about to have their second kid, and they're just breaking up, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like everyone's been through it, and it's just, there's so much, far out, there's so much positivity in the world, and there's so much good stuff, and I think humans are, you know, inherently good, but there's also just, there's so much just hard stuff that goes on day to day to day.
Yeah, there is. Jeez, we've got real heavy, haven't we?
Full on, we have. You wanted to talk about bloody mental health or something? Let's talk about basketball. Let's talk about Anthony Davis and the Lakers now.
Yeah, the world. That's it. But I mean, there definitely is some heavy stuff. I think that's why it's so important to have an outlet, an avenue available all the time, readily available for people to just be able to talk. Because I think even just that going home, you know, you probably more so you probably your dog, you probably vent a little bit while you're out, and, you know. But you know what I mean? Like just being able to go home and just have that dump of your day, as small as that might be, it's just still just gets rid of a little bit of stuff, you know. I think that's pretty important. And then obviously if there's any heavier stuff, you've done a good thing and provided that for him when he just didn't have it.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right.
Which,
And I keep harping back onto the community thing with my mate Charles, because he's, you know, gone from having his wife and kid and just working and not really, kind of losing a bit of the social connections that he's had with his crew. Because Truzzy grew up as, you know, one of the larrikin dudes and out at the pub every weekend and playing footy and filled with laughter and banter and lads and whatever and mates, you know.
Yeah.
And then that's then you move into the family and you're like, okay, cool, now I've got my family, no worries. And then the family's taken away, he's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Now I've got to try and build all that other stuff back up. And he's 34, so a lot of that has passed.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff isn't really there anymore. So that's with him. I'm like, you got to build that back up. You got to go.
And identify it's different too. It's different now because everyone's at different points of their life. So you're not going to, it's a different.
But you can still have the community. That's why I took him to this rock climbing gym, because one, it was fun and I really liked doing it, and I thought he would like it. It was sick. But it's also like, it's a community there. They model it like a gym, like a CrossFit gym or like a F45 or a yoga studio. It's like $30 a month, and you have access to climbing every day. Then they have a couple of yoga classes and some sort of a fitness class or whatever, and all this. It's just in Collingwood. But I took him there, and I just keep harping on him. I'm like, he's a little bit strapped for cash, but not so much. I'm like, man, you just need to find a community, find something you want to do, and just, because that's what I did when I moved to the city. I didn't know anyone up here. Yeah. And now I've got hundreds of mates up here, and some that I'd count as like some of my closest mates. Only a small handful, but they weren't in my life 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. So I think one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because it was top of mind with me with my mate Truz, is like, and we'll talk about obviously mental health. How is, like, because you've been through a transition with the family, obviously. You've got your kids with Mandy, and then you moved out of like that relationship into your new relationship. How is that whole? Because so many people, more than 50% of us, go through divorces. Now statistically.
Look, there's no doubt it provides stress from a number of angles. Financial stress is a huge one. It was probably a huge factor for me selling the gym at that point. Particularly because I'd only just moved the gym and things like that. And obviously shit happens in life and relationships break down. But the biggest thing is, like you say, I mean, then all of a sudden you're relying on people in a lot more when you hadn't, because it's a natural thing for people to be in a relationship. You sort of don't get as much time with your mates because you've got responsibilities and priorities. So all of a sudden you're sort of relying on them a little bit more. You're relying on the family a little bit more. But the hardest part for me, I mean, financially you can work your way back. You can do whatever. It's more the kids, and you hear so many horror stories about fathers particularly not getting access to their kids, and I'm super fortunate that I have the kids 50-50. It wasn't that initially, but that was more on my own behalf because I didn't have anywhere to live. I was living in a room at mum's house, and then I went and rented a little place, but with my hours I just couldn't have the kids all the time. So that was more on.
You had to reset your life.
I had to reset. And I've an amicable relationship, with Mandy, and it allows a lot more freedom as far as the kids go. So there can be open discussions. We've run birthday parties together. But I think probably the biggest factor is a lot of people moving forward and then having, finding a new partner. I'm blessed, like super fortunate, because Shell is unbelievable with the kids. If she was somebody that didn't have time for the kids, didn't see them as a priority, then we wouldn't work. Because at the end of the day, your kids have to be your priority. But
100%.
They absolutely love her. And not that I want my kids to think that every relationship breaks down and I want them to understand love. But, Jasper even said to her, maybe 12 months ago, he said, so Shell, when you and Dad break up, we'll have 3 houses to stay at, because so he thinks he's going to be able to stay. He's going to be able to stay at his mother's. He's going to stay with me, and he's going to stay with Shell. Now, as much as I don't want him to think all relationships are going to break down, it just warmed my heart to think that that's how close he is with her. So, so moving forward for anyone that's, in the middle of a divorce, it's the last thing you're thinking about. But for a male particularly, it's your kids, and all of a sudden, whilst you might have been at work and you got home and you had an hour and a half before they went to bed, or you had an hour or whatever it may be, when that 1 hour's gone, all of a sudden you sit there by yourself and you're in your own head, and then that's easily the hardest part. And
that's what my mate called me the other day. He said exactly that. He goes, not having to go at you, but you're busy. I keep leaning on you, and I know you've. And he goes, not having to go at you in any way, but I can't fill my day. Like, everyone's busy, and I hate just sitting around. He goes, it's fucking killing me.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm fortunate to have them 50-50, and that's fair, and the kids are happy with that, and that's great. But I still hate the weeks they're not with us.
Yeah.
You know, like they go back and I'm like, oh, like I'll still go to all the sporting stuff and go and watch them do whatever, even the weeks, you know, we don't have them. But that's by far the hardest part. And, yeah, I mean, you know, it's a few years down the track for me now, and I'm obviously happily married, and you know, we've been married just over 2 years, and we've got an 8-month-old. Oh, she's nearly 8 months old, and she's awesome. And then watching the love with like Talia and Jas, you know, because Abby's 18 now, which is scary, so she's driving around. So we kind of just catch up with her when she's got time, because her social life's pretty hectic.
Met any boyfriends yet?
She's got a boyfriend. He's not a bad bloke.
Yeah,
she's.
Cool.
Yeah, she's had.
You got a bit of hair on your head. You would have been a bit more scary when you had to shave.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, he's
look like
he
a
actually.
pretty boy now. Actually, I
he's
wouldn't be
good.
too intimidated at all.
What's that?
You said look like a bit of a pretty boy now. I wouldn't be too intimidated at
I
all.
had a bit of growth last week. I should have kept it. Yeah. So you know, and then seeing that connection between them, it's awesome. Like it's So I mean, there's definitely light on the other side for. You know, not that I'm the one to provide all the advice for those guys, but it's just. It's you just want it to be as amicable as you can so that you can see your kids. Because I've got a mate of mine that has just gone through and he's going through hell, where it's just lies and it's just in and out of court. He's spent well over $100,000. She breaks court orders, it means nothing. If he broke court orders, it'd be kidnapping. It's really hard for that. So that's where it becomes an issue. And you know, for him, look, he just battles through and he just finds a way, and he has to and he's been great and he talks a lot, which is good. But there's no easy way to get through it, really. Yeah, unfortunately.
So you're
but like you say, more than 50% of people, more than 50% of relationships break down.
Hey, something funny I just realised when you just told me how old Abby is. You're just going to be a career father. Yeah,
pretty much. I was talking about this the other day.
Working career.
We're actually, we're planning on having at least another couple. So. I was a father at 21, and that's what I said to Shell. I said, we got to pump these kids out, because I'm not going to be a father. But
I want some time to relax at one point.
It's Lexa is like the perfect baby, though. I said to Shell, she's lulling us into a false sense of security because she just sleeps. She's happy. She's just awesome. I don't know, but I do want to rest at some point. Maybe when I'm 70. You know.
Oh, that's classic. Sweet. And then so we probably got to wrap it up. Probably we'll get out of here in 5 or 10 minutes, Ben. But so at the moment you're in the Fireys and you started your online. What would you call it? Just online. Online. Yeah,
online training. It's a concept that even I sort of was a little bit. Well, it was new to me. It more got introduced to me through another guy, and he just said, "Look, I've got a friend who's it's called the Coaches Cartel. I'm part of the Coaches Cartel, where they give you the tools and basically teach you about, like I was talking, ClickFunnels and landing pages and all of that stuff." So, speaking to those guys, and I'm like, how does it work? I had no idea. Like, I've literally trained, like talking about, I've trained people in the military, I've trained fireys, I've trained CrossFitters, the kids, the list is endless. And then I've got to this and I'm like, what do I do? How does this work? So, and it just runs off an app. I used an app. I get to upload the programs. I'll upload nutrition, depending on sort of what coaching they want. And then I'll have like a closed Facebook group. There's accountability questions on there. They get to, a live Q&A once a week with me. So the group can get on and ask questions. They can message me whenever, and I'll get back to them, within a decent time. But it's really that accountability, whereas when they use a log, they go through whatever the workout might be, bench press, 3x10, they enter their weight. You keep going through their squats, whatever, and then hit finish, and it comes through to me, so I can see what they've done. I can see where they're going to go, and they'll still get progression. So it's essentially for people that don't have time. I'm really sort of trying to help parents as much, because they're just busy and they struggle. So they can't necessarily get to the gym to see a PT when they're there. They can't get to a class when it's there. So it's giving them the flexibility to be able to go to a gym if they want to and train. There's videos of all the movements, there's explanations and all of that stuff on the app, so that they've got something to follow and they've got to be accountable to me. So it's been really good. Look, I'm only 8 weeks in from when I've actually launched the stuff. So I'm now just starting to see some really cool stuff with some people, and you know, I mean, you still see everyday life stuff where people get sick and this happens and this happens, and it's, you know, that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's just getting them through that. And I'm big on mindset as well, because I think, you know, nearly 90% of it's psychological for a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like they'll eat something crap
huge.
on a Monday and they go, oh, this week's ruined, I'll just start next week.
Yeah,
You're like, well, no, the week's not ruined, you know, and it doesn't have to be the hardest thing ever. And
accountability is massive.
Yeah.
I do a bit of business consulting for a couple of mates, and I'm just their sounding board and accountability manager.
Yep.
They do it. They come up with the ideas and have to action them, but they have to answer to me accountability-wise, and otherwise they wouldn't do half of it.
That's it.
You know. So, mate, I reckon you'll be wildly successful doing it. I really do.
It's exciting. It's still so new to me, and you know, there's still so much to learn for me, which is cool. I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm keen to see it grow and see where we can go.
Wish you all the best. I reckon you're going to kill it with it, and it's going to help lots of people. You know. It's an avenue to one to many, you know, like a gym, but even more so.
Yeah.
Which is great. So, mate, I reckon that's it. We're
Thank
done.
you.
You're not sweating.
I'm not sweating. I was sweating earlier, but you didn't make me nervous enough, mate. No.
All right. Well, anything before we wrap up? Things that you want to plug? Where can people find you? Like, how would you get onto the online program and so forth if you wanted it?
Yep. So basically, at the moment, I just run it off social media platforms. So either LinkedIn or Facebook. On Facebook, there's Benny Angliss Fitness. It's a closed group, but you can request to join it. And you know, we're just sort of building those members. I post stuff in there, but I also post stuff on my own page. LinkedIn, again, anyone can see it, but LinkedIn's more of a business thing, like you probably know. But yeah, Benny Angliss Fitness. I don't have a website. I'm running it purely through social media at the moment. A website I might look at down the track, but I try and keep it a bit more personal at the moment.
Cool.
Yeah.
If anyone needs an online trainer, couldn't recommend this bloke more highly. All right, Ben, mate, that's been great. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Bill. Pleasure, mate.
All right, and that's a wrap.